welcome back. We will discuss what is happening in DeFi, what's going on. We will explore together why DeFi is a paradigm shift in the financial industry as we know it today. All right, guys, so welcome back to On-DeFi, and today we have a very, very special guest. Today we have Andre Cronje from yearn.finance and from the YeFi token and from much more that he did in the space. I'm very excited to have Andre on today, and we're going to discuss a lot of different topics. Let's get started. All right, Andre, maybe a little bit about yourself. I think most people know who you are, but maybe like a short recap of your background.
Hey man, first things first, thanks for having me on. Short recap, probably a little bit difficult. I've been in tech now longer than most crypto users are old, so it's that might be tricky. Let's just jump into the last few years. I've been focusing primarily on building out on the Ethereum ecosystem. I've been focused around what is now called the DeFi ecosystem. I've been captivated by Solidity. I used to be a very big fan of immutability. So even before this, when I was doing big data things, I was very focused around immutable concatenated logs because that's what we needed to do to facilitate big data streaming at the time, so tools like Kafka and Spark. And then from there, sort of got into the blockchain space, and then in the blockchain space, got very excited about the EVM and eventually Solidity and this concept of immutability, that what you put there stays there. So that's been my primary focus for about the last year and a half, probably. Before that, largely Golang development, helped Phantom Foundation build out their Opera chain, which is their mainnet. That's their own ABFT consensus, which we co-authored the research, and that's based on some earlier research from things like CCK and other ABFT solutions. Before that, I was in fintech, insurance, banking, and loans. Before that, big data, AI, a little bit of neural nets, machine learning. And before that, heavily focused on mobile development, cellular networks, mesh networks, those kinds of things. But I mean, that's about half of it. There's still more at the back end of that. So I think I'll probably stop there for now.
Wow, that's that's an amazing background, and there's so much to unravel there. And I think it is now very, as also again, like, thank you very much to coming on the channel today, because we're now living in this new decentralized financial space. There's a lot of things going on, and I think it's very important for us to share information. And there's a lot of misconceptions, I believe. A lot of people, it feels like 2017 again at some points, but also I see a reviving of some parts of the industry. So I see decentralized autonomous organizations getting more mature, and I think the project that you did is a testament to that. We can have a more decentralized token launch and have a community that will be bootstrapped around that. It's kind of cool to see how that all evolved. So how did you get started with the YeFi token? I did hear in some other interviews that you were doing an interview with Bankless, and there you already tell this whole story, and I think it's very fascinating. So you were basically, if I'm correct, you were managing some money, and you want to do the most efficient way. So you built this tool, and then you were like, well, if other people use it, the tool will be more efficient. So let's open it up. And then now you're at the stage like, okay, hands off, and it's a DAO, and basically it's a protocol that works for money that people can invest.
Yeah, that's a very apt summary. I mean, yearn, yearn, however you want to pronunciate it, it's
Mm-hmm.
you know, been running since early Jan, middle Feb. I think I originally launched it, and I was very happy with how it was running and what it was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually
Mm-hmm.
integrated that into the Curve stack as well. Continued from there, but then when the that's sort of the original DeFi landscape, which was a lot more simple. You had your different lenders. That was your primary source of APY, and your secondary source of interest was trading fees, which you could also do from things like Uniswap. I was never a fan of something like Uniswap because
Mm-hmm.
you always have two pair exposure,
Yes.
except for the stablecoin pools. But even in the stablecoin pools, there is potential IL.
Yes.
So I always liked sitting sort of on the sidelines with Curve and Yearn, and have all of my own and family and friends funds in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then SNX started with their incentivized liquidity pools, which was fine because it was only them on the market. No one else was doing it.
No.
So even then, I didn't see a need to evolve the system because you simply took the output tokens from the Yearn ecosystem and you put it in the SNX incentives, and that was simplistic. And then Compound came out, and now you had the problem of which one is the better one. Is it Compound or is it SNX, and which one should you be using to maximize your interest?
Yes.
And then I started realizing, look, I need to provide a different solution here. The solutions I had up until now will no longer work in this space. Now, at that
Mm-hmm.
time, I wasn't expecting it to blow up in a good way as much as it did, because you
Yeah.
know, a few weeks later, a few months later, you had balancer tokens, you had MTA tokens, you had Curve come
Mm-hmm.
out. In between that, you had Wi-Fi come out as well. So
Mm-hmm.
there were so many new options and so many nuances to those options
Mm-hmm.
that I needed to develop a new system. And that new system was the V2 vaults. And for those to work successfully, option number one is that I am the sole sort of, let's call it, money manager, I guess, which is not a
Mm-hmm.
solution that I think belongs on a blockchain, because
No.
then you might as well, you know, go outside to a traditional investment manager. And for that purpose, the Wi-Fi token needed to exist.
Yeah.
So I like you say, I'm
Mm-hmm.
very excited today, definitely, about the current landscape of the Wi-Fi token and how it's formed sub-DAOs and organizations, and the forum polling versus the off-chain polling versus the on-chain polling, and like the different tiers of decisions that are being made and the participants that are involved is
Mm-hmm.
really, really, really exciting. And it's given Yearn access to intellectual capital it would otherwise not have had.
Yes.
But the the biggest reason that I would like to attribute to that is the fact that so in a normal token distribution or token launch, whatever you want to call it, you
Mm-hmm.
always end up with founder and team and, let's say, investors owning the majority share. They're going to have 50% plus, 60% plus, 70% plus. Now the second you do that, it's the same as when you have a traditional company, because in a traditional company, when you invest in that company, you're not expecting to participate in that company. You invest because you're betting on them to perform well. So you're mentally putting the onus on them to do what they're supposed to do and to perform. So and that gives you a sort of a mental um, apathy, I almost want to say, where you don't really have to be directly involved. You can just leave it and forget about it. Versus with the Wi-Fi distribution, what happened there is everyone realized there isn't a majority holder. You know, there isn't person A, B, C is responsible for this because they're the ones with the primary vested interest in it. So now all of a sudden, you as a token holder, you have a responsibility towards it. And I wouldn't say I planned that, but it's had a phenomenal side effect where now there's a lot of highly skilled people contributing their time and their expertise
Yes.
to further this project. And I think that is a big differentiator. So there's always Vitalik actually wrote about it, the exit to community, which is normally a slower process. I just expedited a little bit, but
Amazing.
I think that's where you get the best result, is by doing that as quickly as possible, so that people don't think, oh, the company is responsible. They realize, oh, we're responsible, and that mind shift, I think, is the important one that happened there, which we sort of saw it with yams as well. And I mean,
Yeah.
like, the mimetic side of it aside, because I can't take it serious while it's called yams, but we'll see where it goes. They also managed it in the same manner, versus the other organizations where you see clearly the majority of control in team and founders. The public perception there is they're responsible.
Yeah.
You know, it's their job, the founders and the team and the investors, to make a success of it. They're just along for the ride. But like, obviously my situation, I'm very lucky in that I don't have large operational expenditures. You know, I don't have a team. If I had an operational budget, this would be a very different discussion. Fortunately, I don't, and my living expenses are negligible. So I was in a fortunate enough position that I could do this. But yeah, I have to say, I'm every day more and more amazed by how more organized it's becoming. I mean, it started as a little bit of a very loose, all over the place thing, but I mean, it's getting to a point where it's starting to look like a well decentralized machine, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, completely agree with that. The growth in the forum and the engagement and the things that people are doing are really mind-boggling. And you also, what you say, the giving it to the community, it takes normally more time. And I think this basically these growths you got exactly at the right time, at the right moment you made that transition. And I think that's it's just perfect timing, and also very well executed code. I also, when I first saw, actually I was recommended to Wi-Fi and Curve via Zwang, a mutual connection of ours. And I looked to the code and I was like, this looks very well written. And I did my own research, and then I started also experimenting with the protocol. And then, like, you kept on developing, and I think people took note of that. And I think the brains in the industry saw what you were saw what you were doing, and they followed now the DAO and everything, and it's quite interesting. I'm quite interested and baffled also by some of the new proposals, in terms of that they want to allocate also a percentage of the earnings to a charity, or to furthering and improving the Ethereum ecosystem. And that is also something I really, it's really cool to see that. What do you think about those kind of proposals that are now evolving?
Yeah, look, I mean, if it's always interesting when I look at it. So I need to qualify that statement a little bit better. So, like, originally, you know, all of the system fees and rewards went to Treasury up until the $500,000 cap. And that made sense for me, because that's a lot of operational capital that you can do good with. You know, you can expand the ecosystem, you can maybe hire some guys, etc. Now, the rest of the rewards over and above that, which is already over $250,000, and I mean, it's only been like 4 days, I think. That's currently going to governance. Now governance is about, I'd say, 50% of the people in there. I'm going to call rent seeking, where, you know, they're not there to participate. They're just there to park their Wi-Fi tokens and get system rewards. And then the other 50% are participating in governance, which you know, they should be incentivized for positive actions they take towards the ecosystem.
Agreed.
But a part of me still thinks that capital can be spent better. You know, that there's so much happening in the Ethereum ecosystem that can be improved by that capital expenditure. Now obviously, someone can always make a proposal, and then it can be added. And I think the public goods, and especially the quadratic voting with the Gitcoin grants,
Yes.
is a fantastic steps towards that direction. I think 1% is a little bit on the low side, which is the current allocation. I would like to see that number bumped a little bit, but I think that's already a step in the right direction. And then there was what was their name now? I don't want to lie to you. I'm just quickly going to check Telegram.
Yeah, and it's also the what I think the long-term investors. I when I invest in something, I want to also to have it of a social impact of sorts, right? If I just invest to make more money, it's very short term. With a protocol that moves in these directions and evolves, it's more it's more longer term focus. It gives me more peace and that I know that I'm also building out something that is actually meaningful potentially, right? We're not sure where this is going, but it would be cool to see that evolve.
But it makes it a bit more meaningful. And as one of the examples, me and Stani from Ava, we've been talking a little bit about so sort of the same concept that Fair Launch Capital, they recently launched. It's basically a pro bono VC that just funds audits and these kinds of things with no expectation back, but they fund with the expectation that you pay it forward. So if you're successful and you manage to make some funds from what you got from them, then the next company that applies, you should pay it forward to them. And we started expanding on that idea a little bit, where it's a little bit of a combination of the credit delegation that me and Ava coded, where you reuse that concept. So you take things like the system rewards and fees, and a percentage of that goes into this credit delegation. Let's call it VC for practical reasons. And anyone can come and apply, and once they apply and it's approved by governance, then they get a credit line from this credit delegation vault, and they can pull credit from that for their purposes. Now the nice thing about this design is that debt that they now accrued in that vault is a tangible thing. So either they can pay that back, or maybe they do a token launch and then they can pay that back with tokens, or maybe they get their community to donate to it, or they can set up a Gitcoin grant that funnels back into that. But it allows for this immediate capital access for building further things in this ecosystem that might just be public goods. It might not even have financial benefit. But it gives people tangible access, which I think is a very important thing. Although I'm front running myself a little bit here because we haven't actually announced that yet. But that's another example where a fractional amount of the rewards that the system is generating can provide a lot of future good and future ecosystem development, because a big problem for a lot of people right now is access to capital, which is ironic because there's so much money being thrown about, but like the average investor is still very apprehensive because of the whole 2017 cycle. So you're not as quick to throw money at something anymore unless it's a white paper with a team and all of the usual bells and whistles that came with that. Now we're moving away from that slowly, but at the same time, right now it's difficult for new builders to even in an anonymous setting be able to get access to that kind of quick funding. So I think that's another example of where a lot of good can come from it.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm rambling a bit, but to answer your original question, yes, I think the more it focuses on how to give back to this ecosystem, the more value it unlocks down the road.
Yeah, it's highly needed, because if we just keep on pushing tokens to each other, it doesn't make sense on the long term. It's just a game of like, okay, when is the best time to exit? If we actually give back to the community and build meaningful applications, then I believe that this is the decentralized financial movement, and also blockchain can actually really do what it's in my opinion all about: a hyper financial inclusion, removing middlemen, and making a financial system more efficient for everybody to use. I think if we give back, and if we give those grants, although maybe some people will not use it correctly, but as long as maybe even if 20 or 30% use it correctly, the whole ecosystem will grow, and we will get more brain power in the industry. And I think that is highly needed, right? Yeah, one other question, right? So when you talked about like, if let's say you're a builder, there's some people that are listening to the channel are mostly developers or the front end, back end developers, or entrepreneurs. And if they get started, what kind of, like, you worked already with Golang and all that. When you looked into DeFi, how did you know which tools to pick, and how do you allocate your time, and how do you learn so fast? What is your secret behind that?
If I had to say I have a superpower, then it's just the sheer skill at which I can absorb new concepts. That's something I've been very, very fortunate to be gifted with. As an example, the first computer science course I did was a 3-year course, but you were allowed to study at your own time, and I finished it within 6 months.
Nice. Amazing.
So I'm fortunate in that the things just click. But that doesn't prohibit anyone from walking the same road, So while I can't give you a Solidity in 21 days shortcut, unfortunately, what I can say is if you have a little bit of background in something like JavaScript or Node or Python, you'll be comfortable with Solidity. It's a very syntactically similar language, which is fun to play with. But I mean, you don't even have to be a Solidity developer to be a DeFi blockchain ecosystem developer, because we already have a lot of very strong tools. I mean, if you're a front-end developer and you just want to build some nice interactivity, your two best tools is learning how the graph works. The graph protocol is a phenomenal source of data, and Web3 injection via something like MetaMask, etc. Now, as another example, if you're a front-end developer, back last year you had to integrate each wallet individually on its own, and that alone was such a monolithic task that it just wasn't worth it. Nowadays you've got libraries that obfuscate all of that for you, that you just import the library, and then Wallet Connect is an example, where you just use that, and now automatically you support MetaMask and Ledger and Coinbase Wallet and the 30 other wallets out there. So knowing those packages, they save a lot of time and energy, because that's already a shortcut that you can use. When you start, you're probably going to be tempted to use something like Infura, which is fantastic. There are a few other options as well. Alchemy comes to mind. And that's great for statically fetching data. But nowadays, almost everyone is using a wallet. So if you use a wallet, you can inject directly via the wallet into its Web3 interaction, and you can pull all of the same data directly through the wallet that you would have otherwise used an Infura connection for. Some exceptions, like a Coinbase wallet, still needs an Infura connection, so you always kind of have that fallback. But that's already a way. Now that's one less tech stack you need to master to get to that same net result. So it's finding. I don't want to call them shortcuts, but it's finding those development ease of use tools that make a big difference. So that's your core almost. Because I mean, as a historically full stack developer myself, moving into Ethereum development and DeFi development was such a pleasure for me, because I no longer needed to build backends. Because the backend exists, if you have that Web3 connection, or the Infura connection, or Alchemy, or whatever it is you use, even if you have your own local Geth node running that you're directly talking to via RPC, all of that is there. So you don't have to worry about your database and your stack on top of that, and your application layer, and try and separate your business logic and all of that stuff. It's all already there and available for you. And And in traditional web development, you know, a lot of I remember a lot of my time was spent API hunting, you know, looking for an API that does the job that I wanted to do, until eventually I just don't get one, and I have to custom dev something myself. But the extremely open nature of Ethereum and Ethereum development, I can promise you, if you look for it, it's there. And even more so, if the backends, there are a lot. Now therein lies quite the, I would say, one of the most time-consuming things that's taken most of my time, but one of the most beneficial things as well, is studying the core players and understanding what their Solidity stack, not anything outside of the Solidity, just their smart contracts, how they look and how they interact. So I spent most of, let's say, my first 6 months doing anything in the DeFi/Ethereum space, just studying DYDX contracts, Uniswap contracts, AVA contracts, compound contracts. And I wasn't building anything in particular. I was just trying to learn how these systems were put together. Now, the nice thing about doing that, one, is you understand how their stack works, which is very powerful, because you can leverage what they do for a bunch of powerful utilities that you should not rebuild yourself. For example, don't build your own lending platform, use AVA or Compound. Don't build your own flash loan solution, you know, use AVA, use Uniswap v2, or use DYDX. You have these tools at your disposal that are open, permissionless, and anyone can access. The secondary benefit of this is you learn a lot of very powerful patterns. So if you look at Compound's tooling, you'll learn a lot about proxy upgradable patterns. If you look at something at DYDX, you'll learn a lot about structs and how the sorting of transactions makes a big difference in your stack execution. So you also learn a lot of very good practices about how to develop Solidity. Even though I'm personally against proxy upgradable patterns, they are very, very useful. So I think when it comes to, if you're new and you're trying to get into this space, that's where I start. You know, pick the protocol that's closest to the thing that you conceptually want to do, and pick it apart. Try and understand how it works. You're going to get the most net benefit out of that. And the nice thing about, you know, smart contract solutions is even though they might be logistically complex, code-wise they're light, because the smart contract, you know, actual lines of code can't be that much, because otherwise it simply can't fit into the data stack inside of an address store. So it's never a lot of code to go through. It's always, you know, maybe 1,000 lines of code, if that much, especially if you remove boilerplate. So it's quick and easy to go through, and it reads very straightforward as well. So I know a lot of people are normally intimidated, and they want to start with a Solidity Hello World or something similar. But honestly, the best thing you can do is to just jump into one of these stacks. Just go through that single source code file and understand what it's doing, and you'll learn so much more from that than anything else.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also, like, Open Zeppelin was for me amazing. The standards that are forming right now, and also the standard you just mentioned. Really interesting that you say, like, okay, a lending protocol is basically the DeFi Legos. There's now some DeFi Legos that are forming, and you know that when you want to build something in DeFi, you better can build on top of these Legos, because trying to you can of course compete with them, but, you know, then you need to probably bring a lot of knowledge and a whole team, because some of these Lego pieces become very complex. And you're also not going to code your own cryptographic protocol, or like use Bitcoin or Ether for that. You're not that. Some people try to do that with some competing change, but in general, it's better to reuse protocols and then build on top of that. That's a really good summary. And then what you said very nicely, like, look into, if you're a builder and you want to tackle a certain industry with a certain concept, look at similar concept, just pick it apart, really deep look into the code, and understand the philosophy and why they made certain technical decisions. Really smart. I saw one time in a tweet of yours, actually this was from January or February, for at the beginning of this year, where you actually mentioned that that you said like Ethereum is so far ahead with its tooling compared to these other chains, and we now see, of course, the rise of Polkadot and other chains. Are you also looking at different like blockchain stacks, or are you mainly focused on Ethereum at this point?
So I'm not a base layer developer. I am a, let's call it, top layer integrator. So the reason I make that qualification is that I build on top of other protocols, and I build on top of other assets. So my base requirement is I need to have those assets and protocols to be able to build something.
Yes.
Because as a base layer example is a lender. I'm not planning on building my own lending system because I think there's too much risk and complexity with it. I like building on top of someone else's lending platform. So I'm not against the idea of building on one of these other chains that have come out, but none of them have captured a sufficient amount of assets and protocols to warrant me looking into them. So that's a heavily time-based statement I just made, because in 6 months from now, in a year from now, that could be different. But given the assets, given the protocols, and given the tooling that exists on Ethereum for my specific type of development, it does not make logical sense to move to any of these other chains or to even spend time and energy investigating them. And they would need to capture that market share away from Ethereum before it even starts making logical sense. Because let's say one of them gets enough traction and is capable of taking 50% of Ethereum's ecosystem. That still doesn't warrant moving over when there's such a rich environment. I mean, you're essentially, you'll need to outpace Ethereum development, then you'll need to outpace platforms like Compound and Aave and Fulcrum and DYDX, and then you need to outpace, Tether, USDC, DAI, Maker, Link, etc. And even if you manage that, you still need to outpace things like MetaMask, Etherscan, Remix.
Yes.
I never like making these statements because I always get very negative backlash and feedback when I say this, but people underestimate the sheer amount of developers that are continuously spending their days and nights advancing the Ethereum ecosystem.
Exactly.
It's not 2 or 3 devs,
No, I think people underestimate why are we here, right? Are we just doing this to build on the chain and get some ways? In my opinion, it goes much deeper and further than that. And that the most developers, and when I listen to your conversations and when I read your articles, I also see that in your statement. I mean, we're here not only to make money, but also for a social cause, I think. And we need to build an alternative financial system because there's something going on in the world, and maybe some people want to have a different way of storing their wealth, or a different way of more efficient way of distributing money. We want to have the whole world financially included, and we want to increase like brains working on certain advances in society. And I think that's what blockchain can do. And if we just indeed, as you said, start hopping on different chains, and it's not really hitting the point. And I think, like looking at Ethereum, the developments in some parts, yes, are, sometimes there's some issues, but you will always have that also at these other chains, right? I think Ethereum has such a an advantage over these other protocols that I also believe that sticking to Ethereum is probably the best cost. But you're never sure, so you can of course make that bet, or the career choice to not focus on Ethereum and focus on other ecosystem. But I do agree. I think Ethereum is at this point makes the most logical sense to do that.
Yeah. And another analogy I'd like to share is, because a lot of people are now saying, yeah, but Ethereum isn't viable because gas fees and how long transactions take. So they're trying to say let's basket it and say they're trying to say the slowness of Ethereum is why you should move to a different chain. But to use a very practical analogy, if you have a highway and there's no cars on that highway, then you can, and you're the only car, you can speed down that highway at top speed, and there's not going to be any issues. But if it's rush hour and that highway is packed with cars, you cannot move fast enough. You have to sit in line. So these other blockchains that everyone is saying is faster is because they're that open highway. They don't have the transactional volumes happening on Ethereum, and that's why they look fast. If you move all of that transactional volume over, guess what's going to happen?
Yes. Yeah, it's the same thing that will happen over and over again, and we saw this playing out with Bitcoin, with all the different forks and the splits, and yeah, and Ethereum it's in my opinion quite a stable. It's a stable ecosystem. It's developing at a good pace. There is, of course, the highway has issues, but that I see in the future with Ethereum 2.0, and that we get like shards for different different financial systems, and we might work with side chains or different solutions, and they all will develop surely, but slowly. I'm very confident that these systems will start to exist. In that regard, do you maybe think that there should be some DeFi protocols working with CK rollups, or for example, or like how Looprin does it, so that you lock a certain capital, so you're basically in some sort of like a side chain? Or what is your view on that? Or do you think it should be all on the main chain?
I think it's purpose dependent. So what I mean with that is, what Loopring is doing is perfect for their use case. Yes. But now that's fine for an exchange. Or as another example, SNX is also doing their roll-up layers, and again, it makes sense because they're in themselves a self-contained ecosystem. They don't interact with the outside Ethereum world. The outside Ethereum world interacts with them. So that's fine. But if you look at something like Yearn, Yearn integrates with so many different native on-chain solutions, it can't move to a rollup. So if you're a standalone solution working on your own with your own net benefit / net result that you want to achieve, perfect solution, easy to move out. It makes sense to do. You use Ethereum as your security, and that's where you lock your original capital, and then you can at high frequency do what you need to do on your sidechain or your rollup or whatever you want to call your solution, layer 2. But it's always going to be purpose dependent. So I yes and no to the question. It makes sense where it makes sense. It's just like when people ask you, why did you use XYZ library? You used it because it's the one that made sense for your solution, and that's why you included it. It's exactly the same with all of these layer 2 solutions, that they are purpose built for a specific problem. And if you are facing that problem, definitely that's your solution, and that's the one you should go for. But I still think that the large majority of interoperability, and when I say interoperability, I mean protocol interoperability, is going to stay native on Ethereum, because there's too much interconnectivity for it to move out.
Yeah, and there's a lot of value there. So if you pay like a couple of dollars of transaction costs for the value that it gives, and that, in my opinion, it's fine. And of course, hopefully we can move, like for people that want to use that, there's a certain value there. So then there is a certain cost to that. And hopefully, I think in the future, we will have shards. So there is also like more of a mainnet that is maybe more cheap to transact for stable tokens or to transfer money or microtransactions. But, let's see how that evolves. What do you think about at DeFi capital management? Basically, that's how you got started with yearn. Like, okay, you're managing some stable coins, you're managing some capital, you put it into a pool. How do you see this evolve? And like, what do you in that regard, like Balancer built an amazing protocol with like Balancer smart pools. So basically now as a developer or as an investment fund, you can make a basket as a fund, and that people that want to allocate capital invest in a very easy way into a basket, and then as a capital manager you can manage that. How do you see this DeFi capital management evolve? And how should, for example, financial advisors position themselves in this stream?
So financial advisors are the middlemen.
Yeah.
And by definition, anything we build in DeFi or even blockchain, its primary strength is cutting out the middleman. So I'd rather say I don't think financial advisors should be positioned here, and you should be giving your money to a smart contract, not to a person. So, but now that being said, there can be people sort of, let's call it soft managing these protocols. So an example, like you said, is like the Balancer pool, where a manager might be trading in and out of it. But you as investor didn't give your money to the manager, you gave it to the pool. Then you might have something more active, which is something like what Set protocol is doing, where you actually entrust a specific person based on their investment / trade strategies, which you like and how they do it. And then on the far end of the spectrum, you have autonomous investment schemes, which is closer to something like yearn, where it on-chain identifies its opportunities and then goes towards it. Obviously, I'm biased, but I consider the autonomous one the most pure, because that's where I think the change should be. I'm a very firm believer in robots talking to robots and not humans talking to robots talking to humans. Yes. But we're seeing a lot of different methodologies around this happening. Some actively managed, some autonomously managed. I am not qualified enough to say which one I think is the right one or which one is the one we'll see in the future. But one thing we can take from the traditional stock market is originally everything was based around short, mid, long-term investment strategies from investment managers, and this is a person you entrusted, and that eventually evolved into arbitrage bots and AIs doing this, and you got to another cycle where it was high frequency trading, where it's happening so fast humans can't even interact with it at this point. Yes. So we'll probably see a similar evolution on our side. Because we're still in those very young early days, so there's still a lot of evolution to happen in the DeFi space, from where we are now to where we can still get. But in my personal opinion, it should be autonomous smart contracts. You should not need a human entity to be doing these things, because one of the beauties of smart contract interaction is it's 24/7. There's never a time when your investment manager is asleep or he is now on a trip with Bali because of all of the commissions he got from your cash. It's just those very, very elegant contracts talking to each other. And to me, that's a lot more beautiful than any human interaction that can possibly happen. So I'm hoping we end up with the fully automated autonomous robotic side. But people have always shown comfort in humanity, which I assume will mean that they will feel more comfortable if there is a human that they can interact with, or feel that there is a human that is responsible. Because I know a big thing is support. Because if it's just a smart contract, you don't have support. It's that simplistic. But if it's a company that you're paying, then it comes with support. So I get that as an additional value add over and above. So if someone wants to attach a support system on top of a smart contract, fine. You're adding an additional value add. But active money management is required for now, but shouldn't exist in the DeFi space in 2 to 5 years from now.
That is an amazing future. And I also hope to, of course, minimize that. What I see right now, a lot of people, I contact myself, I probably also get contacted a lot by people that are like, okay, DeFi, what is it? And they want to get exposure. And then it's basically, you can tell them, of course, this and this is happening, but it's moving so fast. So you need to call them every week again, like, oh, you need to move it there, or you need to move it there. So there's I think still, as you said, some place for some people that manage money or advise or consult people. But yeah, I hope also in the future that we go to more of like a robo advisory kind of setup, or like protocols like yearn that basically evolve themselves. Like you invested in a DAO, and this DAO gets a little bit of money of creating the best, most profitable funds. So that's very, very exciting, and I also see it moving in that direction as well. That looking like that in that regard, right? Looking at the DeFi as a parallel financial market, and looking at the decentralized financial technology stack, or the stack, how do you see it evolve? What are you still missing at this stage?
I mean, there's probably two primary things that still require off-chain interaction, and the sooner we get those two things on-chain, the better. So the one is the first and most important one is more data. We need more data on-chain. So the more Oracle data we can get transcribed or access to directly or indirectly, the better, because there is still a lack of secure price oracles. I mean, we've got something like Chainlink that is doing a phenomenal job, but they've got a small set of price oracles, because there's a fairly high cost every time they need to add one. Now you can start looking towards things like Uniswap or on-chain dexes, but from personal experience, very dangerous. Don't do that. You're going to get flash loan and you're going to lose a lot of money.
Yes.
So that's an important one, but that's also a little bit of a chicken egg one, because saving data on Ethereum is expensive, and doing it in high frequency is very expensive. So until those solutions are a little bit solved, it's not really accessible, but there might be an opportunity for some kind of L2 solution that does the data on high throughput, and then on chain maybe you just request averages for a time period that you're comfortable with. There's ways we can solve that, but it's not yet solvable. And then number two is a trigger based solution. Now this one I don't know how we can do, because a lot of times I still have off-chain infrastructure, and this is bots and scripts and things that sit there and watch on-chain, and when they see something happen on-chain, they sign a transaction and they initiate a certain action. Because that's something you can't do on-chain. A smart contract can't react to an external event. It has to be told to react to an external event. So it's a push system, not a pull system. So I think there is still a requirement there as well, because when contracts can start reacting to another contract, then I think it becomes more powerful. And I'd say it's only really those two things that I require to make it fully autonomous, because those are the two items I would say I still use off-chain information for. But if I was capable of doing that on-chain, then my off-chain infrastructure would stop existing, and then it's a proper solution.
Those are two very interesting and very likely DeFi Lego blocks that I see some of them forming right now, but there's still a battle of like which is the one that will actually work, because I saw some solutions that are out there, but they're mostly still white papers or very early beta versions. But yeah, so there's a lot of opportunities in the space to build these kind of systems. Do you see maybe a future where the DeFi protocol might evolve in such a way that it might allocate some capital to some of these structures like data storage or event triggers, so that the DeFi protocol actually will make these grants and will actually invest maybe as a DAO into these protocols?
Yeah, I mean, the second question I think you asked, we discussed about the fair launch capital model and the delegated credit assignment, and that's a perfect example. So like if someone's working on that kind of stuff, they're the perfect candidate to apply and get a credit line from that, because that's the kind of infrastructure that will further manage to advance yearn. So that's the kind of projects that yearn should be investing in.
That's amazing. That's, yeah, I also see it evolve in that direction. I hope, to really onboard more and more, together as a whole DeFi space. I feel very well connected to the space, and also I feel very fastly connected to everybody in the space, and everybody is connected with each other, and we all should move the space forward and start building these solutions. There's a lot of capital available, and I believe that the DeFi ecosystem is more efficient in allocating capital than the centralized financial ecosystem, and that will issue in hyper growth of the industry, with hopefully not as many, as you said in the beginning, like the different forks or the different attempts of people to just make short-term gains. But I hope that there's more people that will be incentivized to build longer-term value. And in that regard, what is next for yourself? What is your focus at the moment? What are your focusing on right now?
Well, yearn is still the focus for the predominant future. There's still a lot of capital inefficiency when it comes to deployable capital, even in yearn. It's not as optimized as it can be. So the foreseeable future is definitely focusing on those strategies, focusing on those vaults, getting them more efficient, getting utilization ratios, even in lending systems, higher, because there's too much supplied capital and not enough utilized borrow demand. So that's definitely an area I'm focusing on very strongly next, and that's why I started deploying the delegated vaults. And then once I'm comfortable that those are as efficient as they can be, then I want to get back and focus on the other three core projects that's part of the Wi-Fi ecosystem, namely the Y swap exchange, which is the stablecoin AMM mixed together. That's on a research level something I'm very passionate about. Y trade I want to finish. That's the leverage stablecoins, because again, the more trade volume that can run through the system, the better it is for LPs. And then the primary one currently on the list is the Y Insure, which is the non-KYC decentralized insurance. So those are my three next babies that I'm also working in parallel, next to yearn itself. But I mean that in itself is a long roadmap right there. And then there's a few other things running on the sides, but those aren't developed enough yet to really discuss. But they're exploratory things happening as well.
Amazing. And are you looking to hiring? Like, you're still basically doing this by yourself in South Africa, right? Are you looking also to maybe increase your reach by hiring? Well, you have now, of course, the DAO at your disposal, but maybe you should hire maybe some full-time people, or you still want to be like a one-man show basically, or you want to hire some?
I think it's going to be a little bit of both. I mean, I don't. I've on more than one occasion I've been called unmanageable by my managers. So I don't work well when reporting to someone. And I also feel pulled back when I work in a team, because I execute slower when I'm in a team, because there's more knowledge transfer that needs to happen. So as far as sort of, let's call it my R&D prototyping side, I don't see that changing other than me continuing as I am now.
Yes.
But the nice thing is, if you look at something like the V2 yearn, and you look at the vaults and the strategies, that is something that people are actively taking over. So there's already new developers building strategies. There's an ecosystem developing around it. There's off-chain developers building bots and analytics and tools. I mean, there's been so much built around yearn already these last few weeks. I wanted to say months, but let's face it, it's been like a month and a half, so weeks. That it is maturing at the pace faster than I could mature it.
Amazing.
So that to me is really amazing to see. and I have proposed to the DAO that all of these people that have been building and working on it be funded in some kind of retainer mechanism and or full-time if they are willing, sort of a opt-in, whatever they want, they can go for solution. So that is actively happening. And but then, like, if I'm talking about something like why Ensure, that is something that I will predominantly build out on my own until it's at a point where other people can get engaged. So, you know, when I'm in that R&D phase, I work a lot faster solo. And then once the framework is there and the skeleton is there, then other people can add on. So it'll probably be a little bit of mix of the two.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really amazing information. I didn't think basically what works best for you. You work best in the DAO probably. Like you can just do your own thing. You can do R&D at your own pace. Nobody's chasing, and you have still a lot of brain power capacity available, or workers that can do stuff, but only when you want to. There's no politics, or well, there is of course politics, but it's in a different level. If you work at a office or like with traditional company structures, it's yeah, it can be a little bit distracting, especially for a developer. You need to of course always explain yourself 3 times, and I think in a DAO it's just the people that understand you will engage with you on the forums. I think that's really efficient.
Yeah, I have to say the current setup is working phenomenally well for me. I am very, very happy with it. There were a lot of frustrations just when it started up, but that's because of knowledge transfer. So the first few weeks, I did get frustrated by a lot of the people, but that's just because they didn't know and they didn't understand. And they wanted to, which was good. But now most people are on the same page. Everyone knows what's happening. So I'm left to my own devices to build out what I need to build out. And they help in terms of support, maintenance, security, reviews, test cases. You know, there's so much awesome stuff happening around things as I deploy them that yeah. I feel a lot more comfortable, and I feel a lot more secure when I deploy things now than when it was, you know, just me.
Exactly. And I also like how would you motivate people to basically get started? How would you motivate people to join a DAO or to get started? What would be your motivation to these people that are listening and might want to be involved as well?
I mean, it's a cliche, but it comes down to you have to find something you're passionate about. Like all of these open DAOs, and I think Wi-Fi is a very strong one. There is if there's something that you think you would want to do and you would like to do, there's probably opportunity to do it. You know, just inject yourself in the forum, in Discord, in Telegram, wherever it is, and mention what you want to do and how you want to do it. Because if you've got that passion, then the opportunity will create itself. If you think you're going to join one because you're going to get a fat paycheck and it's going to be better than traditional, I hate to break it for you, it's not. You're probably going to end up with less than you are in traditional jobs. So don't think you're going to come here being headhunted and, you know, want to make a fat paycheck. But if you have that passion and you have something that you want to do, and whether it's part-time, full-time, doesn't matter, just inject yourself into one of these projects and just start talking to the people, and very quickly they'll pick it up and help you to start executing and do what you need to do. But the first step is just getting part of the community and finding that thing you're passionate about.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I also want to motivate people as well. There's on the governance.yearn.finance, there's a proposal. It's not only, you don't have to have super high-end backend skills like Andre. You can get started even with writing content or making animations or developing a website or doing some more easier work, and then you can actually grow and work your way up. And I would actually disagree a little bit that I think you can make more money in a DAO as a participant if the DAO is successful. So if you
look, you can, but I make that statement to avoid people that come for that reason.
Yeah.
So if you're passionate, the money will follow. If you come for the money, you're not going to find it.
No, it's an unreachable thing. Yeah, that's That's amazing. So I really I will put all the links in the description below. If again, Andrew, like thank you, so much for all your wise words and all your information about the decentralized financial space and where this is all moving and why we all do this. Where can people best find you, and how can people best interact with you if they want to get in touch or follow your information?
Well, I mean, the best place where I leak information is normally my Twitter. But if they want to interact with me directly, the best place is Telegram. Telegram, Andre Cronje, name, surname, one, and then Twitter, Andre Cronje Tech, just with TECH at the end. Those are really the two best options to use. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm probably not going to respond. You can find me on WeChat. I'm probably not going to respond. If you actually want to interact, those are your two options.
Amazing. Yeah, so let's let everybody motivate, and I also link to the governance yearn post where there's a call for technical copywriters, editors, web developers, designers, animators, rizzers who understand each detail of how yearn works and all that is needed. And let's see where all this space evolves. And Andre, again, I thank you very, very much for your valuable time, and let's keep in touch, and let's interact with each other on the different forums and see where this whole space and still experiment is evolving. But I'm very positive that we can build something very very magical and very interesting moving forward with this decentralized financial ecosystem. Thank you very much, Andre.
No, I just wanted to echo those sentiments 100%, and I'm very excited about where we're going to move towards.
Thank you very much, man, and let's keep the excitement up. Let's keep the motivation flowing, and onboard more people with passion in the space, and not only for short-term gains, but we're here to build long-term value, and we're here to build fundamental blocks that actually move humanity forward in a good way. And that's why we're here, I believe. And I'm very happy that to have people like yourself, Andre, and have people like with Ave or other people around in the space, all building a more interesting financial ecosystem that we can rely on and spend and distribute value in a more fair and efficient way. I think that's why we're here. All right, Andre, thank you very much, and I hope to speak to you again sometime soon where we can catch up again to see where everything evolves to.
Yeah, man, we should do a check-in every few months and see if we're still keeping each other on the right line.
That sounds amazing. Thank you very much, and speak to you very soon. Thank you, Andre. Talk to you later.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.